a request for supplementary appropriation, which is the second for 2023, graciously approved the sum of 2,176,791,286,033 naira as supplementary budget. And this supplementary budget is to fund urgent issues, including 605 billion for national defense and security. Equally, a sum of 300 billion was provided to repair bridges, including Eko and mainland bridges, as well as construction, rehabilitation, of maintenance of many roads nationwide. Equally, the sum of 200 billion was provisioned for seed, agricultural input, supplies, and agricultural implements and infrastructure in order to support expansion of food production. Equally, the sum of 210 billion is provided for the payment of wage awards. In negotiation with the Nigerian Labour Congress, the federal government agreed to pay 35,000 naira each to about 1.5 million employees, and also 400 billion as cash transfer payments. You may recall that the federal government secured $800 million loan from the World Bank to pay cash transfers of 25,000 to 15 million households. The $800 million is for 2 months, October and November, and the President graciously approved that an additional month should be funded by the federal government. Equally, 100 billion has been provided for the Federal Capital Territory in order to support them in urgent and immediate capital expenditure works that can enhance the infrastructure in the city. Equally, 18 billion naira was provided for the Independent National Electoral Commission to support them in the conduct of the Bayelsa, Kogi, and Imo elections. There's some of 5.5 billion naira was provided for the funding of the take-up of the Student Loans Board, as well as 8 billion for the take-up grant of new ministries.
Let us attempt to peep into some of these plans. You talked about safety net earlier. All eyes are now on the national social investment programs designed by the previous administration to lift families out of poverty and how it will be implemented under your leadership. It seems, from all indications, it's been adopted by this government. But some have criticized, for instance, the conditional cash transfer and even the homegrown school feeding program. They say the lack transparency. Some even claim the programs have become some sort of a conduit pipe for corrupt officials to steal public funds. You have talked about reaching out to 15 million poor and vulnerable households through the conditional cash transfer. What will you be doing differently?
Okay, so one of the innovations which we're bringing in first is that on that social register, we are going to verify, validate, and expand it to accommodate more persons in the National Social Register, and then from which we are going to get beneficiaries based on which intervention. Of course, we have said, working with the World Bank, we would be seeking approval from the federal government to begin the cash transfer to Nigerians. That would, the full information on that will come after we've gotten the clearance from the Federal Executive Council probably next week. But what is most important is that we want to increase the social safety net for Nigerians. We want to be able to pull millions of Nigerians out of poverty, and we're going to do it in a transparent manner. We are going to count the numbers together. You know the way, like I told them last time during when we had the management meeting, I said, you know the way they count COVID cases and COVID death associated with COVID and all of that? That's the same way we'll count the number of people we have been able to reach per day, per month, per time, and Nigerians would verify on their own, independent of the ministry, whether this has been truly done or not. We're going to digitalize the system, so it's
hold you to account to that
from
promise.
the banks to the beneficiaries without necessarily going through middlemen. But where that is not possible, for a very small percentage, we'll be flexible enough to ensure that everyone benefits from it and no
To
one's
boost
left behind.
employment and urban incomes, we are providing investment funding for enterprises with greater potential. Similarly, we are increasing investment in micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Commencing this month, the social safety net is being extended through the expansion of the cash transfer programs to an additional 15 million vulnerable households. My administration shall always accord the highest priority to the safety of the people.
Thanks for joining us in TVC News this hour. We begin in Abuja, where President Bola Tinubu has launched the Renewed Hope Conditional Cash Transfer Scale-Up Scheme, which is targeted at giving cash to the poor and vulnerable who have been captured on the social register and their identity verified. The launch of this conditional cash transfer was done by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, on behalf of President Tinubu. TVC News State House correspondent Femi Akondi reports.
The International Day for the Eradication of Poverty is commemorated with the launch of the Renewed Hope Conditional Cash Transfer Scale-Up that will benefit about 61 million Nigerians. President Bola Tinubu's administration officially commenced the disbursement of 25,000 naira each to 15 million households for the next 3 months. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation has committed to ensuring this conditional cash transfer directly gets to the poor.
15 million households will be receiving 75,000 naira over a space of 3 months. This equates to about 61 million Nigerians directly.
President Tinubu says this cash transfer is an immediate intervention to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy removal. There are already plans to expand the social register and capture Nigerians living below the poverty line, which, according to the World Bank, 71 million Nigerians are extremely poor.
The government is working to develop and deploy several more solutions and interventions to help Nigerians of all walks of life. These include A, investment of 100 billion to purchase 3,000 units of 20-seater compressed natural gas powered buses.
In this particular case, the audit trail is there. The mechanism that is going to be used is one that is biometric. It is proven. You will be able to name every single person that has received those funds.
Nigeria's development partners are optimistic that this cash transfer scheme is well intended and will relieve pains caused by the removal of fuel subsidy.
You know, it's understandable that taking such a move would require real political courage. And His Excellency, the President, was willing to take that. And that's where the renewed hope in terms of a better future for Nigeria, it starts there, because otherwise the government would not be able to afford the many services, what it owes to the Nigerian people.
Hopefully, the scale-up of the Renewed Hope Conditional Cash Transfer will lift millions of Nigerians out of poverty. As the federal government says, in the coming days, there will be a rollout of more plans and programs targeted at improving.
For that 30% that do not have an existing account, we want to be able to open a tier 3 account for them, which is an on-the-go account, and then link them up to POS and money agents that can be able to take funds for them. They'll use their card, get the funds at their locality where they live without necessarily going elsewhere.
So, now, another question here will be, how can Nigerians track this? How can we monitor? How transparent is this process? How can we verify that what the federal government is doing is truly transparent?
So that's one of the biggest challenges I had when I came on board. When I came on board, I said, we are going to publish names of beneficiaries for once on the dailies so that every Nigerian will know who benefited. Enough of putting things in secrecy and then you have people say nobody's benefiting, we don't know them, they are ghosts.
Wouldn't that contravene their
data
protection, personal data protection policy?
Protection policy, and of course the freedom of information right and all of those were brought into query. So what we are doing now is to get people to sign off, permitting us to be able to bring this data to the public. That way, we can have a transparent process. Beyond this, it's going to be a bank-to-bank transfer. So it's traceable from the origin to the point where it gets into the account of the Nigerian. And remember, there are conditions that are attached to this. The president is trying to provide some succor, some immediate relief. He has a lot of long-term plans, medium-term plans to be able to provide the best for Nigeria. This is just an immediate cushioning of the economic shock that was brought about by the fuel subsidy. And of course, this is supposed to help families to be able to get some livelihood to do. It's supposed to help them to be able to pay for basic education for their children, learn some skills. All of these are all fashioned to ensure sustainability. So at the end of collecting 75,000 naira, you can tell yourself, well, I used this little for upkeep, but this chunk, I used it to learn a new skill that will bring more money into our pockets.
So you are launching it this month?
Yes.
But the register is not quite ready to begin it. So it might not practically begin this month until next month.
The register will be ready by the 15th of October, and that's why we are launching out on the 17th of October.
Yeah.
However, the expansion, so for instance, when we went into a meeting with the Nigerian Labour Congress, they said part of the requirements to suspend the strike was that we will have vulnerable pensioners involved in this conditional cash transfer. Now, the expansion to cover vulnerable pensioners will take beyond 2 weeks because we need to go to the field, capture them, do the biometrics and all of that, which I went to meet them in their office and clearly told them that they need to work with me, provide the needed data and locations of this person. We'll go into the field, we'll capture them where they live, and open the bank accounts for those who don't have, but we believe all of them should have bank accounts because they are pensioners and they are receiving some form of pension. And then we can now be sure that by the first week of November to the second week of November, they would be receiving their own share of it. So I had that discussion with them, which was a frank discussion, apologized for the reasons why we might not be able to take them on this October. But for the rest, they're starting this October.
So it's supposed to be for initial 3 months, October, November, and December.
December.
Fantastic. When in the month would they be getting the money? Is it at the end of the month?
At the end of the month.
At the end of the month, just like salaries?
Yes, just like salaries for 3 months.
Okay. So before we're due for a break now, but before we do that, I'd like to ask you, since you're the minister in charge of poverty alleviation, there are over almost 135 million Nigerians who are multidimensionally poor. Almost 100 million Nigerians who are living below the poverty line. That means they find it difficult to fend for themselves. If they do not go out a day to earn a living, it might be difficult. Now, the past government has said they will provide 10 million jobs over the next 10 years, which started about 3 years ago or so. From your own point of view, since the president started doing with that responsibility, how much of poverty can we eradicate in Nigeria or alleviate? How much of people can we remove from that cadre?
So there are two things, and I'll carefully explain it to you. I would like to describe it this way. There's a pit that's probably a trunk where poor people are already in it. And then there are those who are right at the edge of it, who might, if not protected, fall into it, right? What our ministry is doing is to, number one, provide a